session. Hang on a second. That's mom calling.
क्या हाल है बेटा?
अस्सलाम वालेकुम मम्मा, आप आ रही हैं मीटिंग में?
अच्छा हाँ मुझे याद नहीं रहा, मैं जरा बिजी थी।
अच्छा, बच्चों के साथ अगर बिजी हैं तो इट्स ओके।
अच्छा
अगर आ जाए तो मैंने ईमेल भेज दी, अगर आ जाए तो
नहीं आ जाओ।
आप कहाँ हैं?
Dad is on the meeting as well.
ओह अच्छा ठीक है, चलो सही है।
Okay.
अल्लाह हाफिज़।
Allah Hafiz. Okay, everybody, I am going to start recording and share my screen. You should be seeing my PowerPoint presentation. Everybody, let me know if you don't see. Okay. Let's see, and now I'm going to mute everybody. There we go. All right. Click from start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. We begin first by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We thank Him. We seek His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Him from all the bad in this world, from the evil consequences of our deeds. And whosoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has in fact achieved a great success. I bear witness that there is no deity, nothing worthy of worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is His slave and final messenger. To proceed, today we're going to talk about a very important topic. And this is going to be about two distinct topics. I'm not going to touch on the first topic as much as I'm going to touch on the second, but I am going to touch on the first a little bit. The first topic that we're going to talk about is what is called a living will. A living will versus the last will and testament. Those are two separate topics. I'm going to talk about today is going to be what is a living will and what is a last will and testament, and what is the difference between the two, and why it's a necessity in the United States and other Western countries. So let's get started. On the agenda today, I'm going to give you a quick foreword, quick introduction, etc., of why this topic was necessary and why I chose to speak about this topic. Now, what I found is some of the points that I'm going to raise in the foreword are very pertinent in the sense that I found them to be even applicable to my own family. I've seen this happen in my own family. This is why I chose to address this topic. Then I'm going to give you a quick overview of what this topic is not about. The reason I always say what this topic is about and what this topic is not about is because it's important to differentiate what we're going to speak about today and what we're not going to speak about. Then I'm going to talk about what is a living will versus what is a last will and testament. What is the difference between the two and the definition of the two. And specifically throughout this talk, I'm going to be talking about why it is absolutely necessary to do this in a Western society, especially for Muslims. It's absolutely necessary. I'm going to give you some pointers all throughout this talk about the importance of a will in Islam, why it's necessary to have a will. And today I'm going to talk about a sample will that I have. Basically, I created a will for myself, and I'm going to give you some pointers on how to create your own living will. Not living will, sorry, last will and testament. That's what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to show you a sample of a living will for myself because I haven't created a living will yet. I've only created a last will and testament. I will differentiate the two for you in just a second, and that is on the agenda today. Foreword. Why this topic is absolutely necessary. In my humble opinion, this topic is absolutely necessary for multiple reasons. There seems to be a culture, or there seems to be an ingrained sense of I guess, avoiding talking about death, as if talking about it will somehow prevent it, or not talking about it, not talking about death will somehow prevent it, or somehow if we avoid these difficult topics, that death is somehow not going to creep up on us. Death is not avoidable. It is unavoidable. And you can't prevent it by not talking about it. If you just avoid talking about it, somehow it's not going to come to you. Sorry, that's not the case at all. More than once in my own family and people around me, whenever I try to broach these kinds of subjects, whenever I try to talk about these kinds of subjects, the typical response that I get is, "Achhi achhi baatein karo." That is absolute nonsense. Sorry. This has to be talked about. This has to be talked about. This has to be written down. This is legality. This is, in a sense, absolutely necessary to be talked about. You cannot avoid this subject. And the reason I also chose this subject, number one, is that I found a dearth of such talks happening in our family. Is that I've also seen, even in my own family, even in my own extended family, families being destroyed and relations of the womb being cut. Because when somebody passes away, the deceased sometimes, actually not sometimes, and most times, does not leave a will or last will and testament. What ends up happening is, because there is no formal written declaration of how that person's assets are to be distributed, the remaining living relatives end up fighting each other as to how those assets are going to be distributed. And I have seen sisters cut off from brothers, mothers cut off from their children. Families get torn apart because of this. Okay, this is no small matter. This is not something to be avoided. This is not something that you can get around, especially if you have children. Especially if you have children, particularly if you have adult children. What ended up happening is, in one of my distant family relatives, they're not distant, but they're fairly close actually. The father passed away without having left a will. And because the remainder of the assets of the father were not distributed equitably, or at least not in the sense that there was no will, none of the family members could come to agreement as to how those assets are to be distributed. And even to this day, brothers are cut off from sisters, mothers are cut off from children because of that mistake. I don't want that mistake to be repeated. And this is why I want to talk about this subject today. Anybody, number one, who has children absolutely needs to listen to this very, very carefully. Specifically, even more important, if you have adult children and if you have some assets to leave behind, you absolutely need to listen to this. You cannot avoid this. Now, what is this lecture not about? What this lecture is not about is the specific details on how the Islamic fiqh related to how the shares of assets are to be split between the relatives after the death of the deceased. So if somebody dies, the details of how the shares should be split, what the share of it is, and what assets should be given to who, etc., between the relatives after the person dies, the details of this, that's not what this lecture is about. The reason is that when I did the research for this lecture, it ended up being that those details are so numerous that I cannot possibly do this in a 1-hour lecture. That's just not possible. There are people who have dedicated their lives and into the study, and possibly in Islamic fiqh, the fiqh related to the details of the shares and the splits of the assets after the deceased passes away is probably the most voluminous volumes of work is given to Islamic scholarship, given to this specific topic. So the fiqh and rulings related to the wills, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, what you can and cannot bequeath, etc., who it is supposed to be bequeathed to after death, etc. The fiqh rulings related to wills is not part of this lecture. Now, why am I doing this? Is for number one, for the reason that in order for me to do justice to this topic, I would have to go to a proper scholar, sit down and go into numerous details, and it cannot possibly be covered in a single lecture, which is why this lecture is not about those details. So if you need to know this, if you want to know this, I suggest you refer to your local masjid, and they definitely will know, and they will refer you to experts who know more details about this. So how is it supposed to be split, what you're supposed to be, what you can bequeath, for example, can you give 1/3 of it, of what you have in charity, etc. All those rulings related to wills, that's not what this lecture is about. You can refer to your local masjid. But what this lecture is about is two major topics, and I'm going to talk about them right now. And the two topics are as follows. What is a living will? A living will. A living will, which is also called a directive to physicians or advanced directive, is a document that lets people state their wishes for end-of-life medical care. Specifically in case if they become unable to communicate their decisions, or if they become incapacitated to the degree that they can no longer speak for themselves. Meaning, a living will is a legal instrument or a directive to physicians in advance of your incapacity. It's a document that lets you state what your wishes are for end-of-life medical care, just in case you become medically incapacitated to make those decisions for yourself. This living will has no power after death, meaning once the person in question dies, this has no impact because it can only make decisions or directives related to your physical medical care while you're alive, but are incapable of making decisions on your own. So that is what's called a living will. Just in case you become incapacitated to the degree because you're in a coma or because you are, or something, heaven forbid, like that happens, your wishes for end-of-life medical care are what is communicated to you, or communicated to your relatives and to your physician in case of such an event happening. Now, this is a difficult subject or topic for people to think about. Why is that? It is very difficult for us to come to terms with our own demise. But guess what? Sorry, it's going to happen to all of you. This legal instrument, this legal advance directive tells people that in case something like that were to ever happen to you, what should be done. For example, in my, well, they're not family, but they are people I know. There was this one lady who got, I think she was practically brain dead for, I'm going to say, 10 years, 12 years sometimes, I think. And during that time, her family kept her alive on what are called life support systems for that time. A living will, if that lady, or if she had had a living will, would have had clear directives on what to do just in case something like that were to happen. For a lot of people, including myself, I would not want my life to continue in case of brain death because of or using life support equipment. I don't want to live on a machine. But in case you are unable to communicate these decisions, these wishes, after you become incapacitated, but you're not legally passed away yet, you're not legally dead yet, the living will communicates your wishes to, number one, your relatives, and number two, your physicians, to your doctors. That's the purpose of a living will. Why is it necessary? Advances in modern medicine has made living will an absolute necessity, at least in my humble opinion. Why? Because modern medicine is able to keep people alive, physically alive, long past brain death. Meaning that Practically, in all practical intents and purposes, their brain is dead. There is no brain activity. But machines keep their lungs going, machines keep their heart going, and their blood pumping. For each and every one of you who is starting to reach that age, this is why I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but if you are starting to reach that age, I'm afraid you have to confront your own mortality. And you have to come to terms what you would like to do just in case something like this were to happen to you. I recommend you consult a physician and consult a legal consultant to write your living will. But in case of complete incapacity, have you thought about who will make end-of-life decisions for you? Or what you would like those end-of-life decisions to be? Imagine if something like this were to happen, there's no such directive in place, which is what was the case in the case of the lady that I just spoke about. If there is no such directive in place, what is going to happen? It'll tear your family apart, which it did in case of the family that I'm talking about, because one of the sons was this was the mother who was in this kind of situation. The eldest son was absolutely adamant that he would not take his mother off of life support. But the younger son, he was of the opinion, he thought that his mother was suffering, that his mother was in pain. And seeing his mother like that on all this machines and equipment and etc. caused him tremendous pain, which caused a huge rift within the family. One of the sons said, hey, you know what? I think it's better if we let our mother go. She's suffering. And the other one says, no, I'm going to keep her alive for as long as necessary, even if it's using machines. If a medical directive, a living will had been in place, there would be no quarrel. Why? The mother's wishes are clear. But in this case, it was not. This is why it is absolutely necessary. Now, one thing I will say, and I will clearly state, it's probably better if you start to do this if you are reaching slightly mature age, if your children are getting older, if you yourself are getting older. I haven't created a living will for myself. I've only created a last will and testament. I have not created a living will, but I have created a medical proxy, and in this recording, I'm declaring who my medical proxy is as well. My medical proxy is my sister, Kamal Akhtar. So you have to make these decisions for yourself. You have to make these decisions for yourself. And you have to come to terms with your own mortality. That is why it's necessary. The second topic that I'm going to talk about, and that is going to talk about in a lot more detail, is the last will and testament. The second legal instrument that I'm going to talk about is the last will and testament. What is a last will and testament? A last will and testament is the legal document by which you identify those individuals or charities or organizations, sometimes, that are going to receive your property and possessions upon your death. These are the individuals or charities that are commonly referred to as the beneficiaries under your last will and testament. Meaning, a last will and testament declares how much of your assets and properties and possessions are going to which person or which charity, etc., upon your death. These charities or individuals are commonly referred to as beneficiaries, the ones who are benefited as a result of your last will and testament. Now, what are some major points regarding the last will and testament? The money that you possess in this life, the money that you have in this life, and I've spoken about this in detail in some of my other lectures as well. In all practical purposes, the money is not yours. Essentially, it is a trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you while you're alive. And once death comes to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also expects you to dispose of this wealth according to Islamic law. Meaning that even after you die, number one, while you were living, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expected you to earn and dispose of your wealth a certain way. I've given a lecture on this as well. And number two, even after you die, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects you to dispose of your assets according to Islamic law. One major point regarding this is, this means that you specifically, with certain exceptions to this particular rule, you do not get to decide what happens with your money upon your death. That direction comes from Islam. Meaning that if upon your death you wish to give all of your money to one child, if you have three sons and one of them happens to be your favorite and you just want to give all your money to that one son, sorry, you're not allowed to do that. These directions on who gets what, the shares, etc., you don't get to decide, because you have to drop this sense from your mind that this money that you possess is somehow yours. Why? Because number one, you can't take it with you to the death. You have to leave it behind you. Similarly, Islamic law stipulates the shares and the percentages, who gets what upon your death. This direction always and must come from Islam. You don't get to decide what happens upon your death. That direction essentially must come from Islam. Now, this topic is not what I'm going to cover today. The details of how it is supposed to be split, etc. If you want to know more about this, refer to your local masjid. But that this direction, how it is going to be split, that has to come from Islam. But you do have some limited permissions in what you're allowed to bequeath and to whom. Meaning, a certain portion of what you possess, you can bequeath if you would like to give to some charity or give to some individuals, but not to any individual. Which individuals you're allowed to bequeath to, and how much you're allowed to bequeath, how much you're permitted to give to someone other than your inheritors. This direction also must come from within the bounds of the Sharia. Who you are allowed to give to, what percentage you're allowed to give, and who you're not allowed, this must also come from Islam. Problem. What if you die, or what if someone passes away, but they do not have a last will and testament? And this happens all the time. A lot of Muslims, they possess a reasonable amount of money, especially Muslims living in the West. They're fairly well off. And they die, but a lot of times they don't have a last will and testament. In case they die without a last will and testament, what happens is that the state, and this depends from different state to state. Maryland has different laws, New Jersey has different laws.
फैसल मुझे भी आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Okay. Oh, hey, assalamu alaikum everybody. How long was I on unmute? Can it? Hey, I'm gonna unmute everybody. What's going on? Oh my God.
Only for a little while, maybe 15 seconds.
15 seconds? Okay, good. I don't know.
30 सेकंड के लिए अनम्यूट थे, आवाज नहीं आई भाई.
फैसल,
Yeah.
मेरा ख्याल है जहां तुम ये बता रहे थे कि जो है वो उसको कैसे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना है, वहां तक सुन लिया था.
Okay, so I will come back. Let me go ahead and do this again. I don't know why it kicked me out. Okay, I'm going to share.
In fact, your screen is not shared anymore.
Okay, I'm sharing it again. Is this screen shared again?
Yes.
Okay, that's better. Let me see if it's still recording. Yep, recording is still going on. Let's play from current slide. Okay. So what I was talking about was, what if you were to pass away without a will in place? This really depends upon state to state, meaning New Jersey has different laws, Maryland has different laws, Virginia has different laws. And the state and what is called a probate court will dispose of and distribute of your assets, and they will decide how that is to be done, and which certainly, most certainly, will not be according to Islamic terms. Meaning, if they decide that all of the money needs to be, or all of the remainder of your estate needs to pass to a living relative, meaning perhaps your only son, or perhaps you have left behind a wife, and it must go all to the wife, then that's what they will decide to do. That's not according to Islamic terms, but they may decide to do that. And number two, another big problem that a lot of people don't think about, and this is especially true for people who have young children. If you pass away and you do not leave a will, a last will and testament, the state will also get to decide what happens to your children and who gets legal custody of your children. Now, this is a big deal. This is very important in the sense that this happens all the time. I'm sorry that this is a difficult subject to talk about, but it happens all the time. Mother and father go out to do groceries, the children home, or the children are with a family member, or they're being looked after, somebody's babysitting. They get into a car accident and both parents die. Happens all the time. What will happen in case if the parents pass away without leaving a last will and testament? The state will then decide what happens to your children and who gets legal custody of your children. The state will decide what is in the quote-unquote best interest of the children. And they may decide to grant legal custody of your children to someone that you would never have approved of while you were alive. Meaning that if in your last will and testament you do not specify who you would like, there is no last will and testament, you have not specified who you would like to get legal custody of your children, they may grant legal custody of your children to a guardian that may be legally fit but may not be Islamically fit. How certain are you, or how certain are we, that all of our relatives, or any of our relatives for that matter, are capable or worthy of having custody of our children, of raising our children in case we pass away? The state gets to decide what happens if you do not have a last will and testament. What if the person that the state decides to grant legal custody of your children to drinks or gambles? In American court systems, those aren't necessarily vices. Those aren't necessarily disqualifications from legal custody. And this is something that you may be questioned about on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You should at least want to give legal custody of your children to people who are dedicated to their religion and who will raise your children in case you pass away according to good morals. But if the states decide what happens to your children, that it's Russian roulette. You don't know what's going to happen. And sorry, this happens all the time. Sometimes one parent passes away, sometimes both parents pass away. The state, in case one parent passes away, the state always grants, unless extraordinary circumstances occur, the state always grants custody, legal custody of the children to the remaining parent. That much is clear. But if both parents pass away, which is a lot more common than you would think, then the state decides who gets legal custody. This is something absolutely essential that you need to put in in your last will and testament. Now, what are some of the legal requirements related to your last will and testament? The first requirement related to your last will and testament is when you write and sign your last will and testament, you must be of sound mind. What does that mean? You're not suffering from some kind of mental illness. You're not suffering from some kind of mental incapacity. You are within your sound mind when you are writing and signing your last will and testament. You must be of sound mind, meaning you must be sane. Second, when you are writing your last will and testament, there is no coercion, meaning nobody is forcing you, nobody is threatening you, nobody is threatening you with physical or any other kind of coercive behavior in order to get you to write your last will and testament. If you are of sound mind and there is no coercion when you're writing your last will and testament, then the final requirement is once you write your last will and testament, there must be two witnesses who witness you signing your last will and testament who are not beneficiaries of your last will and testament. What does that mean? It must be two people who are not beneficiaries listed in your last will and testament who must witness your last will and testament. It cannot be your son, it cannot be your daughter, because they may very well be beneficiaries of your last will and testament. So it must be someone who is not a beneficiary of your last will and testament. If these requirements are met, you're of sound mind, there is no coercion, and you have had it witnessed and signed by two witnesses, then the legal requirement of it being a last will and testament is met. Now, some states do require that the last will and testament be typed up, written up, that it not be written in on a piece of paper using pen and paper or pencil and paper. Sometimes the courts reject such last wills and testaments. But a lot of states still accept such last will and testaments. I have not put that one point into this slide for that reason, that some will still accept, but most of you practically all of you who are listening have to have access to, because you are listening to this on a computer, have to have access to a computer. So type it up, have it printed, get it witnessed by two witnesses. Those are the legal requirements. I'm going to give you one quick ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah about the importance of doing this. And the translation is as follows. Prescribed for you when death approaches any one of you, that if he leaves wealth, that he should make a bequest for the parents and near relatives according to what is acceptable. And this is a duty upon the righteous. This is not something that is a recommendation. That is absolute necessity. It is a requirement upon you. It is a duty upon you. You cannot leave this part out. Now I'm going to give you a sample last will and testament, which is my last will and testament. I'm going to read it for you.
फैसल यार मेरे ज़हन से सवाल निकल जाएगा इसमें it should be notarized होना चाहिए.
No, notary is a form of witnessing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be notarized. You can get it notarized if you like. You should definitely get it notarized, but it is not necessary in order for it to be in full legal effect for it to be notarized. It has to be witnessed by two different people, not necessarily a notary, but a notary is a type of witness. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand, but how to make it more legal? Like just a simple piece of a paper, writing the stuff, and on the two witnesses with their some sort of ID or whatever. How it become illegal? That's I'm asking the question. I will forget.
सर मैं मुझे इस पर जवाब दे दो. यूसुफ, मेरा मशवरा ये होगा कि to get it notarized is no big deal. Just go pay $2 and you are notarized. So अगर तुम कोई डाउट नहीं छोड़ना चाहते स्टेट के माइंड में या लीगल सिस्टम के माइंड में, get it notarized.
हाँ वो तो मुझे पता है, नोटराइज इज नॉट बिग डील, वो तो कोई मसला नहीं है, बट मैं ही पूछना चाह रहा था कि क्या नोटराइज कराने से will it be enough to do the notarized?
Yeah, if you get it notarized by 2 notaries, okay, that's sufficient. Why? Because those 2 notaries, you just pay $4, $2. Any UPS store, I think they charge $5. UPS store. Some notaries that I know, they even do it for free. You go to any attorney's office, any legal office, there's a free notary practically in every building. If you work at a university, I guarantee you there's a notary in your university. If you work at...
Yeah, I know that. Thank you.
Yeah. So you can go to that particular notary. You have your last will and testament typed up, written out, and you say, this is my last will and testament. I would like to sign it in front of you. You sign it in front of them. That's notary. There's 2 separate notaries. That's sufficient. Now, if your question is whether it will be legal if it is not notarized, the answer is, from what I can tell, yes. But again, this is not legal advice. Go speak to an attorney. But I'm fairly certain, because I did not find this requirement anywhere, that in order for a last will and testament to be legal and effective, that it must be notarized. No, it has to be witnessed by 2 witnesses who are not beneficiaries. But if you want it to be perfectly, in the up and up, go get it notarized. Simple. Those are two legal. Does that answer the question, or are you still confused, Mama?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm quite clear, because I forget the question at the end because I'm getting old now. So another one. Can we change it? Let's say I decide to change it. Can we change it, that document?
Good question. Excellent question. We will talk about that in just a second. Woo. 200%. Last will and testament. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent. I will answer you in just a second, Mama. Okay? But the way to do it, the way that I have written, the way that I have done my last will and testament, is that all the salient features that are absolutely essential, that I know are not going to change, I write them up front, and then I add what is called, I believe, I forgot the legal term, a schedule or distribution of estate schedule. Meaning that, let's assume for argument's sake that you would like to get your last will and testament written up right now. But you have 4 children today, and tomorrow you're going to have 5 children, or tomorrow you're going to have 6 children, etc., etc. Those changes happen all the time. In the last will and testament, you say that I want my estate to be distributed according to Schedule A. Okay? So, for example, the way I've done it right now, you see Schedule A, the Islamic distribution of the estate. I've said that I want my distribution of my assets according to the schedule. But every
Faisal, मुझे तुम्हारी screen
जी खाला क्या कह रही हैं?
बेटा मुझे आपकी स्क्रीन ना वहीं पे स्टक हुई है जहाँ सैंपल लिखा हुआ है ना, वो कुछ और मज़ीद नजर नहीं आ रहा.
Is that true for everybody? Can you see my screen, everybody?
You can see it, but it's on one slide.
Only one slide.
Okay.
Now your cursor is moving.
Okay, give me 1 second. I am going to new share, and I'm going to share my Word document. See if you can see my schedule now. Do you see my Word document?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, much better.
हाँ बेटा ठीक है.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the way that I've written my last will and testament, and this is the way I recommend you do it, and I will give you a method of doing this for yourselves. And the method that I'm going to provide you will have all of these, guarantees in place. The way that I've written it, and the way they recommend you do it, if you go to a masjid, any masjid will recommend you do it this way. You just say that this is my last will and testament, and I want my, what's that called? My assets, my estates to be distributed according to the following schedule. Let's assume for argument's sake that tomorrow you come into a lot of money and you would like to distribute it a certain way. You have more children born, heaven forbid somebody who is a beneficiary passes away, etc. How are you supposed to change your last will and testament? You specify in your last will and testament in a specific article, etc., that I would like my assets, my wishes to be distributed according to Schedule A, and you write that schedule separately. So this is what I've done here. Let me see if I can find this schedule, the Islamic distribution of the estate. And once, anytime that change happens, you don't need to change your entire will and testament. All you really need is add an addendum, a modification to the schedule, get that notarized, and you're done. Okay, do you understand? Does that answer the question, Mamu?
I got it.
Okay. So I'm not going to go into the details of everything that I've written down here. My last will and testament, it includes the preamble, where I live, my name, etc. But some of the major salient points and features of a last will and testament that you should include in your own. Number one, I ordain that no autopsy or embalmment should be done to my body unless required by law. And any unjustified delay of my body being washed, wrapped, and clothed should not happen. Meaning that it should be done by a Muslim in accordance to Islamic rites according to the Islamic religion. Now, for most of you, this will not be a problem, and I'll tell you why. The reason for most of you this is not to be a problem is most of my listeners are Muslims, and their near relatives are Muslims as well. But this happened to my brother-in-law. His dear friend, his near and dear friend, who was a non-Muslim, converted to Islam, I'm going to say 10, 12 years ago. But none of his family members did. And he died abruptly. He died abruptly without having a last will and testament. Basically, this particular section, this particular article was not there. So what ended up happening was the probate court decided that his sister, who was a Christian, was going to decide the funeral and burial rites. Now, the sister knew that her brother had converted to Islam, but despite the most, as much as they could, they tried to convince her to let her brother be buried according to Islamic rites. She would not let them. She wanted her brother cremated. And she wanted her brother not to be buried among Muslims. If you have a last will and testament, especially if you are a revert, this is absolutely necessary. You have to have this. Now, the reason I'm giving you all of these examples, these practical examples, is for the reason that this is not something that I'm speaking out of the blue. This happens to people in real life all the time. Okay? So burial rites. Another thing that I ordained in here, etc., is that in case of death, that I not be buried at an extreme distance from where I pass away. What does that mean? I should not be transported from a major distance from where I live. The only reason I would like to be embalmed or transported to a long distance is in case that's the only way to get me to a Muslim cemetery, in case I pass away in an area where there is no Muslim cemetery. But if there's a Muslim cemetery nearby in Maryland, I'm perfectly okay being in Maryland. You do not need to transport me to New Jersey. Okay? These types of wishes and these types of are some of the points, some of the salient points that I'm telling you about. Now, another article that is absolutely necessary that you should have is your debts and expenses. Now, Islamically speaking, your debts and your expenses after you die are still yours. What does that mean? That in case of death, your debts do not get erased. If you owe somebody some money, your estate has to satisfy that debt before your money can be paid out to your beneficiaries. Meaning if you owe somebody $10,000 and your estate turns into $100,000 after you pass away, only $90,000 can be distributed to your beneficiaries because $10,000 is owed to that person. In American law, according to American law, some debts instantly get erased after you die. That is not according to Islamic law. In American law, some debts instantly get erased. That's not the case. That is why you have to have this kind of article in here as well. What you would like to say that I want my debts and expenses, how you would like them to be disposed of once you passed away. etc. What is supposed to be done with your assets? What is supposed to be done with your personal property? What is supposed to be done with your, for example, when I pass away, what is going to happen with my personal bills? Now remember, a bill is also a debt, meaning I've specified in here specifically that in case of my death and my bills have not been paid yet, I declare that my utilities, my cell phone bill, my credit card bill, my gas bill, my electric bill be paid first, meaning my debts be satisfied first before anything can be given to my beneficiaries. Okay. The remainder of the distribution, I'm not going to go into the specific articles and each and every one of these, but I've also specified that in case I pass away, who is supposed to be the guardian of my children after I pass away? Now, all of this is absolutely necessary. Number one, you speak about this. I'm going to talk about this with my wife. And once I have this detailed out with my wife, I'm going to sign it in front of 2 notaries, and I'm going to have it filed away. This is a quick sample of I'm going to go back and share my PowerPoint with you guys.
फैसल
जी खाला।
बेटा ये तो सैंपल आपने थोड़ा बहुत फिल किया हुआ है, तो आप हमें ब्लैंक सैंपल ईमेल कर सकते हो जस्ट टू कि हम लोगों को थोड़ा आइडिया हो कि ये आर्टिकल्स ये पार्ट्स इसमें इंक्लूडेड होने चाहिए.
देखिए आप सबसे number one, that's what I'm going. Are you seeing my screen right now, खाला? आपका PowerPoint नजर आ रही है? Can everybody see my PowerPoint?
जी बेटा.
Okay. This is what I'm going to talk about next. How to create your own.
Okay.
Okay. Number one, and this is what we did today, get educated about this stuff. Know what you're doing. And then speak to someone in your local masjid. Go talk to an imam in your local masjid. Go talk to someone in your local masjid. I guarantee you they have resources. Okay. Most masajid have a pre-printed, what do you say, last will and testament. All you really have to do is write your name, your address, and the names of the people, etc. And you should do it in your locality. The reason I'm asking you to do it in locality, Khala, I know you are in Canada, and some of the people who are listening are in the States. Now, the laws differ according to different countries, what is acceptable, etc., etc. Your local masjid is going to have a template for your locality. So you should refer this matter to your local masjid. So for example, if, let's assume for argument's sake that in Canada, the law is different related to, in case of the parents pass away, who is supposed to get custody of the children, there's supposed to be a specific, some kind of legalese language in the last will and testament in order for it to be enforceable. The masjid will know about it, and the masjid will provide you that resource. If you don't have that resource, at your local masjid, they can at least refer you to somebody who has. There's plenty of resources available online. And finally, if you need my help, I can help you creating yours. But, and this I cannot stress more than enough. At the end of the day, the lecture that I'm recording for you is not legal advice. I am not an attorney. And therefore, in order to be completely covered, in order to be absolutely covered, speak to your attorney about this. Speak to your attorney about this, but I have to give this, what's that called? I have to give this legal or whatever, that this is not absolutely mandatory in the sense that in order for it to be completely legally tight and locked down, please speak to your attorney. I highly recommend it. But if you want to do this on your own, like I did, you can do it. In conclusion, what did we discuss today?
Okay, Faisal, thank you.
No problem. We discussed 2 major points. Number one, we talked about.
Faisal, sorry, interrupt.
Yes, go ahead.
Faisal, एक सवाल का जवाब दीजिए.
जी बोले.
और मेरा ख्याल है ज़्यादा लोगों को ये तशनीगी होगी कि भाई अगर फर्ज करो मैं मरते वक्त $1 लाख छोड़ रहा हूँ, मेरे इतने बच्चे, ठीक है, और जाहिर है बेवा होगी, और मैं चाहूंगा कि कुछ मस्जिद को दे जाऊं, कुछ ईदी ट्रस्ट को दे जाऊं, कुछ, उसकी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का प्रोपोर्शन कैसे तय हो, कौन बताए?
यही तो जो आज का टॉपिक, मैंने इसी वजह से मैंने इस सब्जेक्ट को छेड़ा ही नहीं. द रीजन आई डिडंट बॉदर विद दिस सब्जेक्ट, जिसकी वजह से मैंने तशनीगी छोड़ी है, वो ये है कि ये ऐसा टॉपिक है जो कि आपको रेफर एक स्कॉलर को ही करना है. मैं स्कॉलर नहीं हूं, ठीक है. ये आपको एक ऐसे आदमी को रेफर करना है जो कि इन डिटेल्स के बारे में जानता हो. मैंने जितना स्टडी किया, मैंने सिर्फ उतना स्टडी किया जितना मेरा अपनी लिविंग विल नहीं, अपनी लास्ट विल एंड टेस्टामेंट बनाने के लिए जरूरी था. लेकिन हर एक की सिचुएशन डिफरेंट है. मसलन कोई ऐसा आदमी है जिसके कोई बच्चे ही नहीं है, कोई ऐसा आदमी है जिसके 4 बच्चे हैं, कोई ऐसा आदमी है जिसके 4 बच्चे हैं, बीवी है, कोई ऐसा आदमी है जो कि क्या नाम है $100,000 छोड़ के जा रहा है, कोई ऐसा आदमी है जिसके पास है ही नहीं. तो हर एक की सिचुएशन क्योंकि डिफरेंट होगी और उसके क्या प्रोपोर्शंस होंगी, किस किस को कितना जाएगा. और फॉर एग्जांपल एक बहुत सवाल बहुत कॉमन है कि भाई अगर मुझे 1/3 अलाउड है, एक क्वेश्चन है जो कि लोगों के दिमाग में आता है, that you're allowed to bequeath one third of your wealth, right? Is that recommended? And the answer is no. All of the third is not recommended. That you should not give it to charity. You should give a smaller amount. Okay, leave most of your possessions to your beneficiaries, to your children. And another question they ask is the 1/3, जो एक तिहाई जो कि मैं खुद bequeath कर सकता हूँ, किसी को भी छोड़ सकता हूँ, क्या मैं अपने किसी बेनिफिशियरी को दे सकता हूँ? मसलन मैंने 1/3 अपने एक बेटे को दे दिया और बाकी जो है वो बाकी बच्चों में डिस्ट्रीब्यूट हो गया. ये कर सकते हैं कि नहीं कर सकते? The answer is no, you cannot. इस तरह के जो सारे सवालात हैं वो आप एक स्कॉलर से ही डिस्कस करेंगे. बात समझ रहे हैं?
अच्छा, मेरी बात सुन. नहीं, मैं समझ रहा हूँ, लेकिन एक सवाल फिर जवाब दे दो.
बोले.
आई होप कि यूसुफ भी इसके साथ है, जो सुन रहे हैं वो भी मेरे साथ होंगे कि यार देखो, nobody asked you, nobody paid you, nobody forced you to do such an incredible research. You did it. Thank you. जो मैं कह रहा हूँ.
क्या दोबारा बोलें यार, आपकी आवाज कट गई.
नहीं, हाँ, मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि ये सारा कुछ तुमने किया, ये वॉलंटरी था ना?
हाँ ठीक है
भाई, अभी जो तुमने सारी वॉलंटरी था ना?
हाँ
इसमें कोई फोर्स तो किसी ने नहीं किया तुमको.
हाँ
ठीक है, कम से कम मैंने नहीं किया, तुमने किया. थैंक यू वेरी मच, बहुत अच्छा, अल्लाह भला करे तुम्हारा, बहुत ही अच्छी बात है. आई एम रियली प्राउड ऑफ यू. भाई थोड़ी सी रिसर्च और कर लो, इसलिए कि हम सारे के सारे जाहिल बैठे हुए हैं यहाँ पे. एज फार एज दैट, बिकॉज
परवेज भाई मेरे ख्याल से
नहीं, अगर नहीं खाला देखें,
आप भी ठीक कह रहे हैं, लेकिन जो फैसल,
हाँ नहीं मैं देखें, डैडी की बात बिल्कुल ठीक है कि
नहीं, मेरी बात तो सुन ले. फैसल ये कहना चाह रहा है कि हाँ गो अहेड प्लीज.
मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि अगर मैंने इस बारे में कोई रिसर्च की भी ना, ठीक है, तो वो जनरल रिसर्च होगी. ठीक है, हर एक को अपनी विल, अपनी स्पेसिफिक सिचुएशन से बनानी है.
हाँ, मैं यही परवेज भाई से भी यही कहना चाह रही थी कि फैसल का ये पॉइंट है कि वो हर इंसान की विल, हर इंसान की सिचुएशन उसके हिसाब से होगी. तो अगर 10 पार्टिसिपेंट हैं इस ग्रुप में, तो वो 10 के हवाले से लेक्चर तैयार करे. मेरा तो ये, यानी इस हवाले से वो कह रहा है परवेज भाई.
हाँ, अच्छा, नहीं, मैं इसको बताऊं. पहली बात तो ये कि भाई अगर 10 क्या हो सकता है, कल को 20 लोग हो तो 20 लेक्चर की जरूरत नहीं है. बुनियाद बता दो, फिर हर आदमी अपना, देखो, देयर विल ऑलवेज बी सम ग्रे एरिया हर एक की जिंदगी में, कि उसे नहीं समझ आएगा इसका क्या करूं मैं.
ठीक है, तो फिर इसका मतलब है देन क्या नाम है, क्योंकि आज का लेक्चर मैंने इस टॉपिक पे नहीं गया, अगले जो लेक्चर्स होंगे, और ये जो है ये वाले लेक्चर्स फिर अगर सुन लेंगे, अगर आपको ये डिटेल्स चाहिए तो ये वाले लेक्चर जो है, नंबर 1 एक बहुत ज्यादा डिटेल्स में जाएंगे, और नंबर 2 ये थोड़ा सा ड्राई सब्जेक्ट है. ठीक है, मैथमेटिक्स के कितना किसको अलाउड है, क्या बिक्वीथिंग है, क्या अलाउड है, एटसेट्रा. इतना डिटेल काम है ये कि आदमी आसानी, इट्स नॉट एन इजी सब्जेक्ट. लोगों की जिंदगी गुजरी हैं ये टॉपिक पढ़ते हुए. Okay. Was there anything else? Hello? Did I lose everybody? Man, ये इंटरनेट को पता नहीं क्या हो रहा है. I think I lost everybody.
Try to reconnect.
I think it is trying to reconnect. Hang on.
यहाँ आवाज आ रही है बेटा?
अच्छा आवाज आ रही है. Good. चलें ठीक है. तो other than that, thank you everybody for joining to what the two topics that we talked about today. Number one, what is the living will? Number two, what is the last will and testament? What is the difference between the two? We talked about the importance of the two. We spoke about some methods on how to create your own. And inshallah, we discussed some questions related to that. If you have additional questions, you can, we had some questions during the lecture. If you have any additional questions, you can talk to me right now. Inshallah, I will, next time, whoops.
Okay,
We will talk about that next time, inshallah. Are there any questions?
No.
I think we have questions, लेकिन इस वक्त लाइन खराब हुई है. तुम अगले ही हफ्ते पे रख लो.
चलें ठीक है. Okay, jazakallah khair for coming everyone. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa ma alayna illa al-balaghul mubin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum assalam.